dozens of things that can add to that complication. So, stress environment, it could be medications that one took years before. It's a really broad question. There's not a lot of answers to it. Sean, I can tell you have something to say.
Yeah, so we see this pretty often in our practice, and as one of the evangelists is doing an abdominal MRI, we can see that abdominal girth is still present in visceral fat. So I have an algorithm. I ask my clients if they're coming back, and if they have disappointing results, I start right away. Are you cheating? Are you eating carbs? Tell me about the food you do not want to talk to me about. And secondly, I'll ask them, how about alcohol? Are you drinking alcohol? Because alcohol will slow your metabolism, contribute to abdominal girth, visceral fat. The third one I talked about is sleep. Are you sleeping poorly? Tell me about how you're sleeping. Do you have an app? Do you know? The fourth one is I talked to them about stress, just like Dr. Jaquash said. Stress causes abdominal girth, causes production of cortisol, retention of fat, and you're going to have a hard time losing that weight. And the fifth one is, believe it or not, I get into distance running. So our female counterparts did a great job talking about walking and cutting out distance running, jogging, that your real value is going to be in sprinting. So those are the 5 things I talk to my clients about when they have disappointing results.
I've got hormonal issues right now. So I'm a natural competitive bodybuilder, and one thing that I see a lot in my clientele base is people that chronically diet too frequently. That's going to have a down-regulatory effect on hormonal health. For instance, my baseline is around 700 total testosterone. Lack of sleep and stress with the business has me at about 500. Right now I'm in a prep, so I'm getting sub-calories, and I am sub 5% body fat, so my testosterone dropped all the way to 169, which is very low. Not something to brag about whatsoever. That's why I'm in a very acute phase of a competition prep, and I will properly reverse diet from that to be in a strategic surplus for some time. So especially as a natural athlete, it's incredibly important not to chronically diet for far too long or far too frequently.
And I will just add on to that, looking at DHEA sulfate, most men are low in DHEA and most postmenopausal women are low in DHEA. This is a hormone that is a precursor to androgens as well as estrogens. Levels start to decline around age 30. So for, I don't know the age of this particular individual who asked this question. So that's something to consider as well. In addition to what Dr. Sean just mentioned, we want to look at resistance training as well. So dieting gets you part of the way there, which is great, but adding in that resistance training if you're hitting a plateau when it comes to losing body fat, most of the interventional studies looking at weight loss in particularly people over the age of 50 are now pairing calorie restriction with a combination of resistance training and some sort of cardio, walking after meals and things like that. So when you're trying to get beyond just the diet changes, you cut out the carbs, phenomenal, start to incorporate more training, and that can help with the weight loss plateaus.
Awesome. Response to keto being non-sustainable. Hey, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it is.
Next question, Dr. Jaquash.
I've been ketogenic for about 15 years.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm a perfect model of health. Every once in a while somebody catches a picture of me with beer in my hand, so hey, I'm not perfect. But yeah, it is incredibly sustainable. We have an entire system of the body, an energy system. So, when someone says like, oh, keto it's a fad. No, it's like a system of the body. That's like saying your liver is a fad. Like you're built with another energy system in your body that we typically don't use because somebody figured out that sugar is addictive. And so we keep adding, well, not the people in this room, but the people at Nabisco and General Mills, they've got to figure out how to keep us coming back. And so they produce addictive food, and now we're always using our glucose system. So the people that have that opinion, first of all, they're just uninformed.
Yeah.
So, also keep in mind, the least intelligent people have the strongest opinions. There's a great study on that, done in Kruger in 1999. It really, like the people who know the least think they know the most because they don't know what they don't know. So you get that all the time, and you just have to tell people that they're just wrong. And if you need somebody to tell somebody that they're wrong, I'm more than happy. I love telling people they're wrong.
So I'll add to that. I think I completely agree with what John said. And I think one other additional point that I would put on for some people is an area that a lot of us don't understand because we're still working out the science behind it. That's the microbiome. So there are a number of people that will cheat one time and they will just start circling the drain. They just go on a deep dive. They try, some sort of processed foods, one little chip, and it's the whole bag. And the next day, it's ice cream, and they just go downhill quick. And to those type of people, and if you're considering going keto, I would encourage you to read about and fall in love with the microbiome. These microbes that reside within our gut drive the host to eat for them. They don't have the capacity to influence the diet any other way other than working through their host. So most of the cravings I find in patients and clients I work with, the origin is really within their gut, their microbiome. And to help you do that, besides falling in love with the subject and reading about it, one helpful advice that I give that is a little different than a lot of my carnivore colleagues, physician colleagues would say, is I'm a little bit, I guess, not a complete purist. I do eat some fermented vegetables, but they're only vegetables that are fermented to reduce the plant toxins and defenses that most of us that are in the carnivore space are concerned about. So fermentation to mitigate those plant toxins, but there's also animal products that you can ferment. So dairy comes to mind, kefir, yogurts, for God's sakes, no sugars, no flavors. You gotta, if you're going keto, you're going carnivore, you can't be eating fruit and sugar and things like that. And you want to also consider maybe some fermented but aged cheeses. So the introduction of these microbes have to compete with the microbes down there that want carbohydrates. They're driving you insane with all these cravings. So that would be my tip for people that feel like they just can't be sustained in it. And I completely agree with John. My God, the life improvement when you go keto and carnivore, when you're successful at it, is evidence that you can actually sustain this, and it's worth doing. But it can be hard for people to understand just how much benefit they get because they don't do it enough, and we all know the system is not promoting it. So kudos for you guys showing up here and allowing us to help you.
Rob, before, just one second, what I want you to talk about, and I think it's what you're going to talk about. I think sometimes people get confused. They go ketogenic and then they want to eat at a deficit because they're trying to really get great results very quickly. And it's the long-term deficit that's what's not sustainable. I think that's what you're going to say.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of dietary dogma out there. I've been strict ketogenic now for 8 years without a single deviation. So is my wife. Our son is being strict keto, and he's in the 99th percentile of all his growth markers. I've seen zero evidence that would indicate you can't sustain a well-formulated ketogenic diet indefinitely. The thing is, as a species, we're very fickle creatures. You look at any other species out there, there's no debate as to what their ideal diet should be. Humans, there's this psychological component as well as a physiological. From a physiological standpoint, there's no reason you couldn't be strict keto. From a psychological standpoint, people have all this innate, sense of what they need. They got to peace grandma's home cooking, all that stuff. That's dangerous territory right there. You got to frame your mind around what you're excited about. If you're more excited about your health and well-being and long-term, benefit, that should exceed the temporary high you get from that acute, divulgence into that cheesecake, from grandma's kitchen. So keep that in mind. And as he was saying, from a sustainability standpoint, you have to be able to structure, there's a way to modulate between caloric surplus and deficit in a very healthy, sustainable manner. And you can do all of that while adhering to a strict ketogenic diet. You do not want to be chronically overfeeding or chronically undereating. But if you mitigate that by going through proper phases, you can bypass all those adverse responses.
Good. All right, question. Let's go.
Yeah, you guys have all spoken great on many things that
they don't get enough focus. Can you tell us about some things you feel get too much focus?
Fat.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need dietary fat. So sometimes people say, I'm keto, I just eat boiled chicken breasts. And it's just like, okay, but now that's not sustainable. You're going to get sick from that. So you need to have fats in your diet. And I don't think we really have a great read on where that should be. There's also people that are out there just eating sticks of butter to satiate themselves. And so, because ultimately when you do that, like you eat less calories, but now you're missing the protein. And so, I don't, there is no great study on really identifying for the ketogenic athlete, and I like the studies that focus on athletes better because, you know, you're pushing the body harder, so we're really finding out, like, what we can get out of the body, where should the fat really be? And I think some of the, you know, for me, I just would sort of wing it. Like, the way I did it is I would wing it, and finally I just decided I'm happier eating ribeyes than I am New York steaks. And, you know, that's it. So in lieu of a study, I just have to ask myself, what makes me feel great? So I think that fat is just the thing.
So my pet peeve is little tiny gnats in the dinner, like something small that people get hung up on. They don't want to go keto, they don't want to get carnivore, they don't want to do something because of a little tiny thing. So an example of this is recently I had a client get all troubled about the benefits of ancient salt, which I think is hugely beneficial. I don't think we've done enough studies on the contribution to our health being optimized through all these heavily mineralized ancient salts that our ancestors would avail themselves to, that we're only just getting a track of it. This client was troubled about lead that may be present from a natural form in that. And it really is pretty insignificant. And here they're just completely terrified about that notion. So before you get really upset about something, life is about, you know, analysis. Nature favors organism that analyzes the best. So life is a sheet of paper and a line down it. You add up all the pluses and minuses. You read them as much as you can. You understand the benefits and harms and get smart on them. And don't get hung up on a little teeny tiny thing that might cause you not to do something awesome like carnivore, keto, exercise, resistance training, sprinting, fasting, these other things, practices, heat shock proteins, cold shock proteins, saunas, cold showers, all these awesome things because you find out one little thing that keeps you from doing that. So watch for that gnat that's going to keep you off the track.
Yeah, just echo that same thing. There's a lot of majoring and minors out there where people will fixate on this esoteric thing that could definitely get you to that 1 percentile greater, but it's not going to be the make or break factor. When you're analyzing your nutrition through a classic 80-20 analysis, if you're simply eating quality, wholesome, single ingredient, nutrient-dense foods, getting enough sleep, and moving enough, that's going to solve most people's problems. From there, you can then dive into all the cool little extravagant stuff, but that shouldn't be the priority.
Love that. And to echo that, I think a lot of people fixate on what does or doesn't break your fast. Well, having a little stevia in your coffee break your fast and slow down autophagy. Or what about a little whole cream? I think, as Robert just alluded to, that is majoring in the minors. So if you go for a walk and you have a little cream in your coffee, it's probably not a big deal. So not fretting over the small nuances about what will or won't. Like some people will maybe go exercise and they want to have, say, electrolytes or creatine or some sort of ergogenic aid, but they're worried if they have that, they're not going to get the benefits from the exercise session. But we know that exercise enhances autophagy and all the beneficial metabolic properties that fasting does as well. So not focusing on those little nuances and keeping the big picture in mind, I think, is something that we all got to be better about.
My favorite question is when someone says, I swallowed a bug while I was outside, did it break my fast? I actually get that question every once in a while.
That's so funny. That's protein.
Plenty of that here for sure in Nebraska. Question, gentlemen, ladies, ask. Okay, I've got another one prepared here. If your goal is to reduce visceral fat, how often should you sprint, or what things can you do? This is for you, Dr. O'Mara, and everyone else. How often or what should you do to reduce visceral fat? I think that's very highly played in men.
So I'll address the overlap between visceral fat and sprinting. What we found time and time again when we do before and after interval assessment of sprinting being introduced into a client's MRI assessment for the visceral fat is dramatic elimination of visceral fat. Dramatic. I am not aware of any form of exercise. John might be getting a little worked out, but sprinting, my God, it number 2 is resistance training, weightlifting, and X3 bar. But sprinting, really the biggest change we've seen in visceral fat in the shortest period of time is with sprinting. Now, having said that, you have to be very careful about sprinting. If you have not been sprinting, I cannot tell you how many times an older individual who's a follower of mine, fortunately no clients, who will suddenly fall in love with sprinting, sees people advocating it, and then they'll go out and try to sprint. Listen to me. You are very susceptible to a serious injury, straining a muscle, when you sprint if you're not accustomed to doing that. And the reason is you're very diseased. You'd have been eliminated from the gene pool 50,000 years ago because you've never been able to evade a predator trying to kill you. Or you wouldn't have been able to help somebody that really needed it fast. So you're diseased. So the way around this, and what I tell clients and followers, and I get so kind of tired of telling it, is accelerate very, very slowly. Your ability to like warm up and do all these warm-ups, and you think you're all warmed up because you jog for a half hour, then you stop and you launch off on some line, accelerate 0 to 60, and all that warm-up did nothing. What you got to do is accelerate very slow. So spend about 20-30 seconds to slowly accelerate, and then hit your maximum effort. Slowly achieving that, and you'll protect yourself from getting an injury. The last part of that question is frequency on sprints. Nature likes variety. Nature doesn't like a workout for 90 minutes doing the exact same thing. Nature likes you to mix up your sprints. Sometimes the bear chased you a long time. Sometimes you got the deer or the woolly mammoth quick, and it was a short sprint. So mix it up. Do not try to do the same thing all the time. So sometimes it's a 100-meter sprint, 6 seconds. Sometimes it's one sprint for 10 seconds. My workout this week was 10 sprints for 200 meters. So I mix it up, change it up all the time, and that works the best. Variety, slow acceleration, take-home points.
Just a point of clarification. I actually do recommend sprinting as the number one thing for dropping body fat in general. Yeah.
Wow.
So, like X3 is great for growing muscle, but there are other things, like especially from a growth hormone perspective, and this is the only meta-analysis I ever authored, and I'm never going to do that again. There's a few guys in the back here who've done meta-analysis, and they suck. There's just so much data you have to put together. But it was on afferent firing of muscle and how that affects growth hormone levels. So when your reflexes fire muscles all over your body, this is what I would call the sprint effect, growth hormone goes very high. And you can only do this once a day. If you try and do it twice a day, the second time doesn't work. But that period of time, growth hormone going up, and cortisol gets suppressed. So we have, there's no such thing as a bad hormone. You have cortisol for a reason, but it's supposed to go up and basically slow you down from what you're doing, and then it's supposed to go down. So, amazing mediator of those two hormones is sprinting. And my only caution for people is sprinting is relative. Like, you should go fast for you, which might not look like sprinting to anybody else, but that's okay. Because it has to be intense, but it has to be within the limitations of your tendons and ligaments. And I mean, I'm sure you see a torn Achilles or something like that. Yeah, it's like the most common sprinting injury from somebody who they were really fast in high school. Now they're 55. And so you just have to keep that in mind, and you have to keep in mind it's relative to you. Just like resistance training, when somebody gets an X3 and they say, well, I can only use the white band, I say, great, you got 3 more bands to graduate to. Like, you have a long way to go. Like, it's not a problem. It's just where you are now. It's where you're going that counts.
Appreciate that. When you said, now you're 55, I'm 53, I thought you were looking at me.
I was looking at that.
I never heard you call it that before.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. If you are eating a strict carnivore diet, is it necessary to take any additional supplements?
No.
The meat's hard.
You want any more background?
Do you want
So,
more?
there's a lot of talk on that subject. So, the vitamin recommendations. So, anytime there's a nutrition argument on the internet, it's usually a very stupid conversation, but what you'll notice is people go back to the recommended daily allowances of vitamins, and that's a big criticism of carnivore. But let's look at where those recommendations came from. They came from expert opinion, as in no studies whatsoever, from the 1950s. So as far as medical recommendations, I don't think there is any piece of information in medicine today that is worse and grossly inappropriate, and so obviously grossly inappropriate as the recommended daily allowances of vitamins. It doesn't mean I'm saying they're all wrong. It doesn't mean I'm saying some are right, some are not right. We really don't know. But what we know is when we test someone's blood, we can find deficiencies. And that's really the only guideline that I think somebody should follow. So like, for example, you might notice I have what I call a tan, which is usually me just being kind of red. But I get a lot of sun because I'm vitamin D deficient. I'm Nordic background, so yeah, that's just sort of the way I am, and I pay attention to that. But that's really the only deficiency I've ever had. So as long as somebody's looking at their blood, they won't have any deficiency at all. And for those really nervous people that are just scared to death, they're going to miss out on some really important vitamin, and I just kind of like grit my teeth and I go, you can have liver every once in a while. Or liverwurst, which actually tastes fantastic. Just don't ask my wife about that. She thinks it's terrible. But, they grind up liver and they basically put pepper in it. So, it's nice. But every micronutrient that we've discovered is in liver. So you can do that if you want. But I don't think it's necessary. I think for 2 million years people ate muscle meat. And that's it.
So I will add to that. I agree there are deficiencies and people are probably overusing supplements. In my practice, I have my clients doing so many things, saunas and cold showers and fasting, besides eating either keto or carnivore. And one of the deficiencies that come up a lot are magnesium deficiencies. So people very frequently, as they do these things, they enter lipolysis, are burning fat a lot, and they go through their electrolytes. So, the need to eat ancient salts to make sure that you're getting your minerals is implied, I think, when you do, especially a carnivore diet, that you want to add, I think, a good ancient salt. I have no affiliation with Blue Edmonds real salt, but I do like them a lot, and I buy it, pay for it myself, and give it to my clients to get started on it. And magnesium. So one of the things that people end up having, a lot of my clients, if they don't do that, is muscle cramps. So if you have muscle cramps, give magnesium, try some supplements. Our ancestors would have got it in water that was much more present 50,000 years ago. But today, with the agricultural practices that we have, our water supply is electrolyte deficient. And the number one deficiency in America today is magnesium deficiency. So I would add the electrolytes, ancient salts, magnesium and with it, potassium to help increase the absorption. So otherwise, your food and your water sources are going to give you what you need.
I'll just add on to this. Beautiful comments by everyone here. I think blood work is really important for people, especially after the age of 40. So looking at standard Chem24, CBC, looking at your different liver enzymes, as well as vitamin D is really important. If there's a cardiovascular risk factor or first-degree relative that has had a myocardial infarction or heart attack, looking at your omega-3 index, there's a company in Sioux Falls, South Dakota called OmegaQuant. Pretty good data there showing the omega-3 index above 6% helps prevent sudden cardiac death. So I think the supplement, the question is, do you need supplements? Not everyone needs supplements, but in individual contexts, like for example, Robert is on a low calorie diet right now, for competition prep. There's really good research to show that adding zinc can actually improve testosterone. So different nuances there. Good evidence, if you're doing a lot of sauna therapy, for example, you might deplete magnesium, zinc, and other minerals. So I think context matters there, and considering your health history, your goals, and then looking at your labs to see if what you're eating corroborates with changes, metabolically speaking, using objective biomarkers. So a little bit of a more nuanced conversation would be my suggestion about supplements.
That's really good. That's great perspective, because how many times are we marketed to simple questions why you put in 97 octane versus 92 octane? We don't even know why we do that. You're proving the point, all of you right now, saying you gotta know how your car runs if you put in crappy gas or whatever it may be, right? I love that, because sometimes as guys, we're barbaric and we don't think. I mean, not you guys, me. Brian, if you'll go, please, Brian.
First of all, great presentations. I love the interaction. I just had one question or request. Could you speak to natural methods to improve suppressed testosterone, to bring them back up to a more optimal
In what age category?
mid-50s, 53.
Hey, start asking for me. I told you don't ask that. Thanks. Go ahead, yeah. About 50s.
There's a lot of different natural things that come to mind. I just mentioned zinc. Zinc has actually been shown, going back to, I think, 1997 or so, there's a study. I don't know how they depleted individuals in zinc. I can't remember what toxin or something, but it was a randomized study where they had a control group, and this was just in men, and they depleted zinc in these individuals and watched their testosterone go down proportionally with the degree of zinc depletion, and then did a follow-up part of that study where they increased zinc supplementation. It was like zinc citrate, which is a really poorly absorbed form of zinc. And zinc, as these zinc levels increased, there was an increase in testosterone. And since sharing that literature on my YouTube channel, I've actually had a lot of men comment. I know this is anecdotal, right? This is just the internet, but many people have noticed an anecdotal shift when men in particular, when they increase their zinc levels by way of supplementation, 50 to 75 milligrams. This is nothing. It's pennies a day to do this, by the way. And you can get a nice shift in testosterone. We talked earlier about DHEA. This is the precursor to pretty much all the androgens in the body for men and women. This starts to decline at age 30. And so if DHEA is low, it's going to be hard to then cause your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis to tell the testes to make testosterone because there's not enough precursors, right? We hear about cortisol, but DHEA is actually downstream, from cholesterol, DHEA is downstream from that. So I would optimize just basic stuff here. Sleep, exercise, calories, protein. Then look at zinc, look at DHEA. And then if you want to go down to more of the pharmacologic route, look at HCG and Clomid. So this has been utilized in bodybuilding forever. People would do 12 or 14-week cycles of anabolic steroids. And how do you kickstart the gonads after suppressing your entire hormonal axis? Well, you take HCG and Clomid. So that's another route you can go down. Even before starting TRT, I'd recommend, especially for men under 60, if you want to optimize natural production. Most, you don't even have to go to an endocrinologist if you want to get prescribed this. Most hormone-savvy family medicine doctors or internal medicine doctors will be open to speaking with you about this. You can Google Clomid and hypogonadism. There are downsides with Clomid, mood changes, potential vision changes. It's not recommended long-term, but that could be another option. But your question was, what natural therapies? That's not totally natural, but I think zinc, sleep, exercise, protein, calories should really help. And then last but not least, I know it sounds crazy, but bovine testicular extract. So glandular therapies have been used for well over 100 years in the treatment of cancer and even diabetes. People would take, you've heard about liver on stage here. Liver could be good for people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or hepatitis. Well, taking testicular extract can actually help with the testicles. And hypogonadism, so that's another modality. And this might sound crazy to some of you, but if you think about hypothyroidism, what do we use for hypothyroidism? We use bovine thyroid as well as porcine thyroid, and it's very effective. Westroid and Armour-thyroid, very effective for treating hypothyroidism. So why wouldn't the glandulars of an animal help us humans? And it makes a lot of sense for testosterone. Those are my thoughts.
And keep in mind, like, you have to look at, like, total testosterone is part of it. You gotta look at free testosterone, sex hormone binding globulin. There's a lot of, like, home goods, like the clothes you wear, the lotions you use, the cleaning products you use, all those can have xenoestrogens, which create a higher sex hormone binding globulin, which may reduce your free testosterone that's bioavailable. So you have to kind of, that's kind of going the majoring the minds route. If you're trying to get everything optimized, you can certainly focus on that as a natural remedy as well.
Never use hand sanitizer. You probably heard that before. That's my favorite thing is, people are complaining about their low testosterone and they're like covering their hands in hand sanitizer all the time. It's like, yeah, you just up your estrogen right there. That's, going in the wrong direction. As far as like exercise, the heavier the exercise, the more activity you're going to get in testosterone receptors, which has the effect of how much testosterone you secrete. So, the second chapter of my book, I reference so many different studies that looks at, heavy is relative, it's a little like what I said about sprinting, but also there are, not necessarily talking about X3, but variable resistance. One of the whole ideas behind variable resistance is it's a strategic way to get a lot more force through a muscle than you could with weights. So that's something to keep in mind. The heavier, the more activity in the androgen receptors, the more testosterone your body's going to make.
So I would add, first of all, everybody did a great job here. I don't really have to add much except for this one point, and that is the healthier you are, the healthier your testicles. The healthier your testicles, the more testosterone. So resist the temptation to always think you got to take a pill, you got to do some kind of shortcut. You just want to be the healthiest you possibly can get. And let me encourage you with this last thought. 4 million years, we optimized our testosterone through natural living without measuring things. That's what you want to do. You want to live well. Figure out how to live well. Be an unusual man. Be very competitive. Do not give up. Compete with other people. Sprint against other guys. Sprint against your wife. Those are the kind of things, when you live well, you're going to increase your levels in everything across the board.
Well said. We have one more question. The people are mad at me right now. They're yelling at me.
I'll make this quick.
Yes.
My dad is 71 years old. Back in 2016, I got him started on MCT oil because he's a big coffee drinker, and it was the best way to get him into ketosis. I started teaching him how to eat a ketogenic diet. He and my mother lost so much weight that my father is now 147 pounds. He is 5'9". A little bit underweight, I guess, is what his doctor is saying. So my mother wants to feed him carbs, and not good carbs, cinnamon roll type carbs. So 2 questions. How do I keep him in a constant state of ketosis? Because my family has a history of Alzheimer's, and I don't want to say a long goodbye to either one of my parents. How do I keep him in ketosis? And what are some exercise strategies that I can give him in order to build muscle and get some of that weight back? The only thing he's doing right now is like mowing the lawn.
One thing I would say, I see this a lot with people that come that have been chronically restricting. Our metabolism is incredibly adaptable. So if you start under eating, your hunger naturally becomes suppressed as your metabolic rate decreases. So just as you have to kind of push past the point of hunger when you're transitioning into a deficit, you have to kind of push past the point of satiety if you're trying to upregulate that metabolic rate. And oftentimes what people will see is they won't be hungry, but they'll almost force feed to an extent, and then their hunger ramps up to follow suit. So if you can just simply get him eating more calories, he should notice an increase in overall hunger, which will then result in more caloric consumption. So that would be one thing, all coming from quality, fats and proteins, well within the realms of the ketogenic diet. And then from a resistance training standpoint, anything is better than nothing. Like I'm in the process of getting my mom set up on weight training as well, and I'm going to get her an adjustable bench and dumbbells, maybe the next free bar even.
What?
And we'll rock and roll. Like a little bit of progress today is better than no progress yesterday, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. Like anything is better than nothing.
Tell your mom cinnamon rolls are poison. Tell her I said that.
She's recording it right there. Right there, she's recording.
Yeah, that's like the worst thing you can eat.
Any last thoughts? We're
Doesn't even
over,
sound
and I just want to respect your guys' time. Anything at all? Any last 20-second of wisdom to the crowd?
I'm
Mike, let's go with you.
people don't
20 seconds, 30 seconds.
I would just pick one thing that you learned this weekend and take serious action on it. The thing that you felt that resonated most with you when you heard it at that time, you heard a ton of tips throughout these last 48 hours. Pick that one thing and see it through over the next month.
Yeah, I would just echo the fact that this lifestyle is 1,000% sustainable, and you just simply have to get excited about the long term. Like play the long game with everything you do. Like once you get excited about the rabbit hole that you're diving into when it comes to nutrition, you start diving into every component of it. Like that should be far more exciting and just enabling and empowering than any temporary high you would get from eating and divulging something totally counter to this. So let that be the resounding thought in the back of your mind and play that long game for now and forever.
My thoughts to conclude would be your body is your most important physical asset. Nothing's more important, not your house, not your financial portfolio, not your boats, anything else, they all pale in comparison. It's because your body in this condition will define exactly how much you're going to enjoy or suffer the future that you have in your life. So dispense with the notion of just trying to get healthy, optimize yourself, get your best return, invest in your most important understand, make these tough choices, invest in getting yourself as healthy as you can possibly be.
I really actually have a question for Sean. This is the first time, we've been friends for a long time, but the first time we got to hang out. So visceral fat is something that people don't necessarily know a lot about, don't necessarily think about. It's one of the best markers of longevity that we have. I think part of the reason people don't look at it is because those that have didn't like the answer they got, because they're just unhealthy. They didn't like hearing that they were unhealthy, so they didn't talk about their visceral fat analysis. But I want to know from Sean, how many grams of carbohydrates per day should one eat to have the absolute optimal low level of visceral fat?
So my answer for somebody who really wants to eliminate visceral fat is 0. The more you eliminate those carbohydrates, the better you dissipate visceral fat, and the better you get your fat.
Yes, gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you all so much.